Are you struggling on your radio calls to ATC? Are you looking for a better way to practice that's not up there in the air in that stressful situation? Well, I want to talk to you guys about something called AR Sim or Aviation Radio Simulator by Plain English. It lets you practice talking to ATC through all phases of VFR and IFR flight, from taxi out to takeoff, all at your own pace. There's no simulator setup needed, and it works on any device, mobile or the web. So whether you're a novice or seasoned pro, the guided communication curriculum in trainer mode will elevate your comms proficiency greatly. Download ARSim by Plain English today and check out our show notes where you can get 10% off using a coupon code. It is a great tool and I highly, highly recommend it. Hello, 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 and welcome into the Audio Ground School Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Smith, founder and creator of Part-Time Pilot and the Audio Ground School Podcast. So welcome in, everybody. Today is a really, really special episode. It's another one of those bonus episodes where we interview a subject expert on something that can really, really help out our student pilots. And in this episode, we're going to interview former Major League Baseball pitcher Bob Tewksbury. So you're probably wondering, how is Bob going to help us pilots? Well, it's actually really, really cool. I don't want to give it away, but a little bit about Bob. Like I said, a Major League Baseball pitcher. He had over 100 career wins. He was an all-star. He has a master's in sports psychology. He was a mental skills players coach. I'm pretty sure when he was a players coach, they won a World Series or maybe more than one. He's been an adjunct professor. He's an author. That's actually how I found out about him, from his book 90% Mental. I read it about 10 years ago, and I highly, highly recommend it. I'm not going to spoil what's in it, so when you listen to this interview, you'll understand what kind of content Bob does and what would be in the book. So if you want to hear more from Bob, you can buy that book on Amazon for just like $15 or so. Highly recommend it. I'll put a link to the book in the show notes. Again, it's called 90% Mental. And he's also been in a movie. So Bob has the full resume, and I don't want to give any more away. So you're going to have to listen to that interview right now and see how it can really benefit, what Bob has to say can really benefit you as a student pilot. Check it out. All right, welcome in, everybody. Today we have a really exciting guest, Bob Tewksbury, and I'm going to kind of intro Bob. I said some introductions, before this recording, but I want Bob to verify everything I said about him. So hey, Bob, and so in the intro that I recorded, I said you're a former Major League Baseball pitcher with over 100 career wins, an MLB All-Star. You have a master's degree in sports psychology and counseling, a mental skills player coach.
Yeah.
And
It's a certified mental performance coach. Yeah,
okay.
that's a new certificate that they have for training. So CMPC is the acronym for it. Yeah.
Okay. And we'll get in a little bit. You were kind of the first, you kind of created that
Well, I was one of
genre.
the first former players to go back and get a degree and then get into that field. I started in 2000, so it's been, I think there's been a few players since then, but prior to that, I don't think there was any position in that. So yeah, I'd like not a pioneer, but in the group of people forging a new path, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And then so an adjunct professor, is that
Um, that was a while ago, but I
okay?
did teach. I did teach for a couple of years at a technical college. Yes, so that's true too.
Very cool. And then I know you're an author because that's how I found you, through your book called 90% Mental. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then I read that you're also in a movie,
I was in the Scout.
The Scout.
Yeah,
I
with Brendan Fraser and Albert Brooks back in '94.
Wow. So
A
you've
small
done
cameo part. Yeah,
nice. You've done quite a bit.
yeah. I guess I have. I'm getting older. That's all. So
While
Yeah,
you
I've been in a movie, wrote a book, met a couple presidents. Yeah, I've been very fortunate to have done the things that I've done and still doing it. So it's fun.
That's awesome. So I was gonna say, did I miss anything? Is there anything you would
I
want to
don't think
add to
so.
your?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I have my own private practice now, working with professional and amateur athletes on mental skills. But that's really about it. Yeah, I'd like to play golf. I like to paint. And so those are my hobbies. And yeah, so things are good.
Awesome. So I got to ask you, I know we're going to get into how this relates to piloting, but I got to ask you a question about your playing career, if you don't mind. I'm a lifelong Seattle Mariners fan. I know, oof, right? But I was a huge fan of Ken Griffey Jr. So do you have like a tidbit or story on facing Griffey?
Oh man. Well, he's probably one of the best hitters I ever faced. And I think that people want to go to a YouTube video. There's a video of him hitting his 50th home run off me at the Metrodome in 1998. I played with his dad. Excuse me. I played with his dad, Ken Griffey, at with the Yankees my rookie year.
Oh, wow.
And then yeah, he's just exceptional player. I mean, those Jay Buhner was a former Yankee farmhand. I knew Jay Buhner, and those teams with Seattle back then were really good. And the Kingdom was not my favorite ballpark, but the but Seattle's a great city. I love going to Seattle, and but yeah, Griffey put that place on the map, I think.
Yeah, I mean that nine they say that 95 team with Griffey that kind of saved the Mariners in Seattle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. And they just built that beautiful new stadium, and they won last year. They made the playoffs, I think, for the first time in a long time, I think.
yeah, last year we didn't. It was kind of disappointing because we were all
They,
expecting them to go back.
yeah,
But
maybe the year before.
yeah, the year before, and I went to the game because it was like, it's been so long, and we it went to like 12 innings against the Astros, and it was 0-0 for like 12 or 13 innings, and then the Astros finally beat us. So it was not the most it was a good pitching duel, lots of good
Disappointing,
pitching,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it was rough to watch.
Um,
Cool. So yeah, so just want to, if you can, just kind of walk us through how you kind of transitioned from a player to what you talked about earlier, the what did you call it again? That title now?
well, the field now, I mean, there's a lot of different names for the field. Some people call it mental strength coach, some people call it mental conditioning, some people call it mental skills. But there's an organization called the Applied Association of Sports Psychology that created a certification so that there's because everyone was calling themselves sports psychologists, and you have to have a PhD to be a psychologist. So they helped to clear the murky waters by creating a certification called the Certified Mental Performance Coach, and that's kind of a requirement now for people in the field. But when I started, I retired. I finished my undergrad work. I had 18 hours or so. I finished that when I was 40. I think I went back to school, and my when my kids were in school, we were all in school, and then I was working with the Red Sox as a just a pitching consultant, and went back and got a master's thinking that maybe this could be a field of combining my professional experience with some academic knowledge in the field. And so I went to Boston University and finished that program. And then in 2004, started working with the Red Sox in that capacity, and worked there for until 2015, I think. I was fortunate to work with a lot of great players and see three championships. And uh, 04, 07, and 13. Um, and then they didn't renew my contract, and I went to the Giants for 2 years, and then to the Cubs for 2 years. And so I did about 16 years with teams, from 2004 to 2020, and then COVID came and sent everyone home, and I just decided to stay home. So I've had my own practice since 2000, and but that's how I get into it. It was totally, what am I going to do when I get done playing? Oh, this sounds like a good thing. Let's go back to school, and it's turned out to be a great second career. Yeah.
Awesome. So this is the book 90% Mental. So in that you kind of talk about, well, not kind of, a lot, but about how the mental side of the game benefited you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you say, you didn't have the fastest fastball or the best stuff per se, but your mental side was what like made your career, really. Would you
Yeah.
agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of it. But, so there's three aspects to performance: physical, fundamental, and mental. And so, there's an overlap in all those areas. And physically, I didn't have the same, fastball velocity that some people had, but I had good command. So I made up for that through my technique and through my, being able to throw strikes. But with that, the mental part of that, of not being afraid to allow a hit. I didn't care if the guy got a hit. I didn't want to walk him. If he hits it, someone can catch it. And
Yeah.
so, and they did a lot of times. But, just fighting those, the negative thinking patterns, the distractions, expectations of yourself and those put upon you by others. And so, and that really solidified. I didn't have those skills when I played for the Yankees as a young player. They probably came up more in my 30s, when I was with the Cardinals, and through trial and error. Really, I did a lot of reading on psychology. I was always looking at, books on performance. Harvey Dorfman was a mentor of mine. He wrote, the trilogy of baseball books that people, if they're into the mental game of baseball, can find him. Um, so yeah, so I think you're right, Nick. I mean, it was a big part of but visualization was the biggest part of that skill that I had. And I think that's what really, um, that was my biggest mental skill.
Was there a point maybe in your 30s when you said you started to really lean into that? Was there a point when you kind of thought, I have something here that I've figured out that can help other people? Or did you not kind of figure out what you until after you stopped playing?
Um, no, I mean, I, I tell people now that I worked with, and for the last 20 years, I tell people how much it helped me and that it's a great tool that you can use, but a lot of people don't spend the time to do it. So, um, but back then it wasn't I was kind of an outlier. I don't think a lot of people spent as much time doing that as I did. I mean, I can remember, I think the story in the book about picturing myself walking into Lou Pinella's office and having him tell me I made the team, out of spring training. That was through visualization. I can remember a handful of games that, I visualized walking off the mound after in Pittsburgh after pitching a complete game, and 2 days later that happened. It was so it's such a powerful skill. And the origin of that came from my dad, and because he was a big Norman Vincent Peale fan. And if you haven't heard of Norman Vincent Peale, you should look him up. He wrote the
Okay.
Power of Positive Thinking, one of the first books on self-help psychology, and and that he had if you can see it and believe it, you can achieve it. And so he talked about imagery and visual. It was more visualization then. So I started doing it in high school. I started practicing that in high school and then a little bit in college. College was a little crazier, um, but then again, when I got back to pro ball, I started doing it again, and it was a really powerful skill for me.
Awesome. So people can probably start to understand, why I wanted to have you on for pilots, and that because something I talk about, if you followed me or the podcast, that I think helped me during my pilot training was visualization. And pilots call it chair flying, where basically you sit in a chair
Hmm.
and you just close your eyes and you just go through. So I did this for the check ride, is like the test the pilots take to finally, there's an FAA examiner and you fly with them and they test you on all the skills and whatever. So it's a very nerve wracking, day, but you kind of know, you have an idea of what's going to happen and everything. There's procedures to start the engine and to take off and all that stuff. And so I would have, I'd sit in a chair and I'd have, my knee board with all my notes and taxi diagrams and all that with me. And I would just visualize the entire check ride. Like like even like I'm adding power to the engine, I'm making a
Awesome.
left turn, all that stuff. And so I always tell my students the power of visualization. And I was telling you this earlier, but I became a believer in high school football. My high school football coach was a huge believer in visualization. And he was telling us before my first varsity game against our rival to visualize the night before or whatever. And I visualized, getting an interception. And then the first play of the game, I got an interception. And so after that, I was just a believer in that. So
Yeah. Did
that's
you guys
kind of,
win the game?
we lost that game, but it was a close one. We were a lower division in
Hmm.
Washington. It's like we were 2A and they were 4A, but they used to be our rivals, so we still played them.
Yeah.
Not making any excuses. We still should have beat them, but
No, I
but
just had to know the rest of the story if you picked it off if you
uh,
won. But
yeah,
no, I mean that's what the experiences of people that have done it. It's like deja vu, you know. It's so. I just talked to a college lacrosse goalie this morning about that, and she hadn't practiced it and before games, and I'm like, so I talked to her about doing it, and they play tonight. Who knows? Maybe she'll save a career high in shots, but yeah, it's really powerful.
yeah, that's so. Tell me a little bit about your private practice now. I mean, you kind of mentioned, is that kind of a typical customer that would come to you and just someone who wants to improve their performance in sports?
Yeah, I have I've got a good amount of clients, probably too many, but I've worked this past year. I worked with the University of Maine women's basketball team, and they won their tournament, and they got to the NCAA's, which was fun. They lost to Ohio State, the second seeded team in their bracket. I've worked with Division 3 hockey, D3 baseball. And I think the book really helped be a conduit to a lot of that because I get emails. I have an email today from a 17-year-old pitcher in Massachusetts, but I have college kids at D1 schools, D2 schools, D3 schools. Um, and yeah, so I think they read the book. My contact info's in there. I get an email and it's pretty busy, January when baseball season starts back up again, February, March, and then it slows down. But I really have enjoyed some other sports too. I have a professional hockey player that I'm going to start working with, and I've had a PGA golfer, and so sports outside of baseball are really fun for me because it's something different. But yeah, so people reach out or call me, and in this particular case, the goalie. My daughter went to that college, and I'm kind of helping the coach out, talking to a couple of players. So, but yeah, everything's on Zoom. I have a couple of assessments that I like to start with, no matter what sport they play, and then just set up some weekly calls and figure out what areas they need to work on, whether it's self-talk or imagery or breathing and then follow up with those, their homework assignments. And oftentimes I think people call because they think it's going to be a quick fix, like this is going to work. And
Yeah.
if you don't put in the work, it doesn't work, and it takes time. I mean, it's slow to change uh, old behaviors, especially in the sporting environment, because the amount of time, that you have, if you're on the pitcher's mound and you're facing a hitter, that might last what, 30 seconds? The whole inning may last 5 minutes, and then you've got to wait 5 days to recreate that. So it's a lot of time. So that it's a slow process, but those that put in the time, just like your students, those that put in the time generally have good outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, I was just talking to a friend about this the other day because he had the same epiphany. He had got like a new sales job where it's all commission based, and he had seen other people having success. And at first he was like really struggling because with sales, right? If you're not those commission based things, if you're not getting them, like it could be really bad or really great. And he realized, once he really dove full and really put in the time, and it's just like in anything, like you said, with my stuff, we have some students that just race through all the practice tests and, and they never really improve their scores. And then they want an endorsement from us. And I'm like, I can tell, we can see how much time you spent on all the lessons. Like you got to put in the work. Like it's one thing to just memorize some questions and pass the test, but is that going to make you a better or safer pilot? Like,
Mm.
no, because you don't understand like why these questions are and answers are the way that they are. So, um, cool. So I had your book here. I was just wondering if you could maybe talk about what inspired you to write it, or
Yeah,
maybe something about the book.
sure. It was totally came out of the blue. I had wanted to write a book after I stopped playing, but I wasn't sure of the structure of it. Was it going to be a pitching book, based on what I think are the keys to success for pitching, or was it going to be a biography, which I didn't want to do? So I had I had worked with not really a co-writer, but somebody that I could put all this stuff in, and he would organize it, and he just loved to read and edit. And so I had a lot of stuff written, whether it's stories in the book or and I kept a journal when I played, so I had
Oh,
notes
nice.
that I could go back and get an accurate take on what actually happened. And
Yeah.
so I had done that, and then I submitted it to a couple of agents, and nothing ever happened. And so it was a couple year process, and I just said to heck with it. And then it was like almost close to Christmas one year. The phone rings, and it's a literary agent in New York, and he goes, "Hey, I want to write a book with you, and this is what I want. I want your story, and then how it went into mental skills and how you got into it and who you helped and how you did that, and we need to find someone to write it." And he goes, I already have the title. It's 90% mental. And
Wow.
so yeah, he was great. A guy named Rob Kirkpatrick. And uh, so we found a writer. There was a couple people that he vetted, and but we found one that I knew. He used to write for the Minneapolis the Tribune, I think. And a guy named Scott Miller. And Scott, we hit it off. Great guy, very professional. He's written for Bleacher Report, The Athletic. He's from San Diego. He lives in San Diego. And
Oh,
he used
cool.
to start a lot of stuff with the Padres. And so yeah, we just started writing, and I sent him my stuff, and he did a great job, tying it in. And I love his style of writing. And then the players that, Lester and Rizzo and Anthony Miller and Joe Torre and the people that are in that book, Greg Maddox, that were able to sign off on that so we could use their name and tell their story. So I owe a lot to those players. And and to Scott. So that's how it happened. It was totally out of the blue. I had given up writing. Guy called me, and the next thing I know, 2 years later, it's out, and I'm really psyched to hear that when people read it. I had a baseball player actually at the University of Maine that read it in 2 days, and he called me to talk about it, and so it takes a while for a book to get its shelf life, I guess, but I think mine's still doing well, and I'm really appreciative of that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the book, and it's been a while since I read it, but I'm curious when you said that, do you get many people like me from outside of sports, like Pilot, that contact you about it?
Yeah, I have. I haven't done a podcast in a long time. I think everyone was doing it in COVID, and
Yeah.
it's kind of slowed down. But yeah, I get a lot of requests from people. Actually, I had a big Seattle Mariner fan that was a scientist for Novo Nordisk, and I went up to Seattle and spoke to the group of people up there and on performance, and so that was really fun. That came about through the book, and so a lot of different things have happened. It's been pretty exciting. Yeah.
That's awesome. So the one main takeaway that I still remember from the book is your visualization programs. So, because I kind of relate those to kind of like what I was talking about, the chair flying. Can you kind of give an example of what visualization program that maybe you use or you use for some of the players you mentioned?
Well, I think it's changed a lot. When I was playing, um, I would just listen to music like most people, like you did in your gym or wherever, and I would just listen to Phil Collins was a favorite. I think we had shared that. In the Air Tonight was one of my go-to songs.
Wow,
Um,
that's crazy.
yeah, and I would just picture myself on the mound, and it wasn't really structured like here's my delivery and it would just be like there's the pitch, there's the result. you know, I'm walking off the field, shaking hands, whatever it is. And so so my wife now, my girlfriend at the time, made a playlist. So this is back in the Walkman days, not the iPads. And so the night before I pitched in spring training of '86, I would go out on the beach and I'd listen to the music, and I would, pitch seashells into the ocean, and I'd lay on the beach and I'd picture myself pitching. And I did that before every start, and I pitched 20 scoreless innings, consecutive scoreless innings in spring training.
Wow.
Um, and before I went to spring training, I had created an image in my mind of walking into Lou Pinella's office and having him tell me that I made the team. So back to Norman Vincent Peale, if you can see it and believe it, you can achieve it. So why not do the end result? And that image was so powerful. I mean, I drove to spring training in a 1978 two-tone brown Mercury Zephyr, an old car, into the parking lot at Yankees, in Fort Lauderdale at the time, with Mercedes and Beamers and all this other stuff. And I get my 78 two-tone brown Mercury Zephyr. But I remember stopping at a stoplight and just creating this image, and tears would come down my eyes because it was like so powerful. So then every night before I started, I'd do the imagery, pitch 20 scoreless innings. And a week before spring training, the clubhouse guy tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Lou wants to see you." And I walked into Pinella's office, and I literally walked into my vision, my dream, that he said, "You're going to start the fourth game of the year against the Brewers." And I was like, "Yeah, I already know. I've been here."
Did you say
So
that
no, I
or
didn't.
no?
I wasn't that ballsy back then. Um, but and then and again, I mean, it went in flows. I didn't do it all the time because it's hard to maintain the energy. It takes a lot of energy to do that, and um, but I did it often enough so that I know the benefits of it. And then when I stopped playing, with technology that's come on now, and people really have a hard time focusing on, just there's so much stimulation, that I started recording audio programs for players. The one that's in the book that Rizzo listened to is kind of a generic program I made for the Red Sox players. That was on a burn to a CD,
Hmm.
um, and but now I'll talk to whether it's a golfer, and we'll write the script together. Where are you? What do you feel? What do you smell? How's the club feel in your hand? Feel your, and so it'll be his words, but I'll narrate it and record it on GarageBand and then send it to him. And I've done, lacrosse goalies, hockey. I've done every baseball pitchers, infielders, hitters, so that they can listen to it. So it's their words, my voice. But a lot of people have said that they found that to be easier to focus than trying to do it themselves, because the hard part with imagery is controllability, right? To control the images so that you don't get distracted. Like, so if you're a hitter and you want to see the ball come in and you want to get a base hit to right field, sometimes you see the ball come in and you see a ground ball to second base, so that controllability is an issue. And
So would you, if that happened, because I've had that exact thing happen, right? Where I'm trying to visualize something else and like a wrong thought comes in, right?
yeah,
Do you just like I kind of like try and shake it out almost and just
yeah,
like start
no,
over?
yeah, that's what I do. I mean, when I had it, in fact, if I had a negative, when I didn't, when I had a negative thought on the mound, I would shake my head like I was trying to shake it out. I would hit my leg with my glove like it was a delete button. I'd swipe the pitching rubber. So the same thing in imagery. A lot of the research talks about, you can rewind it and play it over again. I just, start over. I
Isn't
don't.
there, is that what an anchor
An
is?
anchor statement. Yeah, the term. Excuse me, I got to open a window here. The
Oh yeah,
term,
no worries.
the anchor statement is, yeah, a word or a phrase that keeps you focused on the task, because we can't think about, two things at the same time. You can't think about, I'm gonna, the count's 3-2, and you're thinking, oh, I don't want to walk them. And what happens is you walk them. Um, but so what I say is 3-2, bases loaded. The anchor statement could be smooth and easy. And so I'm not thinking about the outcome. All I want to be is smooth and easy. And so that gives you a better chance to overcome, that negative thinking or the fear of consequence or anything like that. So the anchor statement, and try to have players come up with those too. What's your anchor statement? What do you go to when you need to think of something that's not related to the outcome? Um, so you bring it back to what's the task, whether you're flying a plane or whether you're hitting a golf ball or throwing a baseball, you have to focus on the task. And so, that's the anchor statement stuff. That's more around self-talk. But the imagery, I just the feedback I have players, it's easier to keep focus when they can just listen to the words and create those pictures versus trying to picture them themselves when they start to get scattered.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So is that your anchor statement, smooth and easy? Is
No,
that
my anchor
wow.
statement, that's one of them. Mine was just like on the side, and that's a little complicated for some non-baseball people, but basically, and it's kind of long, but I know it. I knew what that means. Usually it's one or two words, but so when starting pitchers, every second or third day between starts, they throw a bullpen session, and it's called the side session. So when you
Oh,
throw a side session, it's relaxed, it's easy. There's no outcome, there's no consequence. It's just so mine was just like on the side. So my body knew I could literally transform on the mound in a game situation, if I said, just like on the side, I could go to the bullpen and just go, okay, nice and easy. So that's what worked for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, the when you said smooth and easy, I thought that'd be a good one for golf.
Yeah,
Smooth and
smooth and
easy.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of hitters use, see the ball, get down on time. A lot of hitters lift up their front foot. So if that's late, your swing's going to be late. So get down on time means getting down to give you a chance to
Hmm.
make solid contact. So, but yeah, those two things have been really powerful. I think those are, and the breathing also comes into play where your you can feel the tension in your body, and it always works better when we're relaxed more than when we're tense. And so the ability to learn how to control your breath and use it to your advantage in moments when you need to is important. And a lot of athletes don't do that because it's like
Hmm.
they it's like they're going to hit a car in front of them and they go and they freeze up because that's the perception that they have.
Yeah.
Um,
You know what's crazy is so I've been looking for some experts to interview, right? And I've interviewed two other experts, an expert on stress who specifically deals with pilots and stress, and then an expert on sleep. And you're the third like expert now to just talk about the importance of breathing in all those things, sleep, stress,
yeah,
you know, performance. Like it's crazy.
yeah. I mean, and we don't use it. People that you can use it. Whether you're in traffic in a big city, you're at a stoplight, someone cuts you off in the grocery store, your bags are late at the airport. Stuff happens all the time, and to hold that tension and to makes it worse. So what do? You just gotta breathe through it, and
Yeah.
and I think that's probably that's a I think visualization. I think they're all underutilized. I think a lot of players and athletes, if I feel good, I do good. If I feel bad, I do bad. And there's more to it than that. Yeah, you can. Yeah, when you feel good, you're going to do good. But how do you perform in spite of how you feel? And
Yeah.
that's what a true professional does is they focus on the things they need to do to perform in spite of how they feel. And that's the ultimate goal. Doesn't
Yeah.
guarantee you're going to be successful, but it does guarantee you're going to give yourself a chance to be successful.
Yeah. Would you in your visualization programs because I know we're visualizing successful outcomes, right? Would you ever like put in your program like plan like any adversity or you don't even like
No, yeah, I didn't when I did this, I didn't do it, but the research talks about that, how you're going to overcome things. Picture yourself in this situation. I'm sure part of pilots is, it's easy to fly well, they say it's easy to steer a boat in calm seas. I'm sure it's easy to fly a plane when, there's calm weather, but what do you do when there's not? What do you do when the engine goes out? What do you do when this happens? You have to have a plan B, right? And you have to
right.
rehearse that.
So
And
would you for pilots, if pilots were building a program, would you recommend that they kind of have these, situations where they maybe lose an engine or there's
absolutely,
really bad turbulence and stuff? Okay.
I think you can picture that. Yeah. How are you going to respond to that? Um, when I talk to athletes now and I make a program, um, sometimes I'll do, like, say I'm making one for a reliever and I'll do a clean inning, like, 1, 2, 3, no base runners. And then we do we call it a dirty inning, coming in with men on base.
Hmm.
And okay, it's second and third. There's no outs, and the cleanup hitter's up. What are you going to do? And to picture yourself pitch. So I think it's important for people to be able to go through those situations I just remember talking when I was with the Cubs. I remember talking to a fighter pilot who had flown, I, you know, dozens of missions, and during the Afghanistan war, and he talked about what he would do. He would visualize himself walking into his quarters, getting his flight gear on, walking out to they'd all walk out to the plane, going up the step, the check. He would visualize the same stuff you're talking about, getting the engine going, and then he said, I would visualize my whole mission, whether it was a 2 hour flight or I would visualize the mission and then the return because you want to see yourself coming back. And
Yeah.
so he said he would probably spend an hour in an imagery session just going through all of that just to and I think and part of that he did talk about those times where things didn't go. You have to plan for that. You can talk about it, but how do you replicate it? And you can replicate it in your mind, you know, in the chair. Okay, what happened? I'm sure you talked about it with what do you do? You can talk about it technically, your intellect, but when you're in the stimulus, when you're in that environment and the stimulus hits, and the fact is your engine's out and your heart rate's soaring and you're scared to death, if you haven't been there before, why not let yourself be there? Oh, I've done this before. I can do this.
So, right. So is that the power of visualization in your eyes that like the mind can't tell the difference between
Right.
that, if you visualize it, it thinks you've done it, then it's no different than actually doing it in the mind.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
premise of it. Yeah. I mean, we could, all the research with groups of people that shoot foul shots, some that just do imagery, some that do both. And, it was a prisoner of war. I read somewhere, he visualized playing golf at his home course every day. And that's what kept him sane in the prison camp. And when he came out, he shot his best score because he didn't swing it, but he saw himself doing it. So,
Wow.
and even
Wow.
the research talks about how they're, the muscle tissues, the fibers do engage at a much lesser degree, but yeah, it's just so powerful, such a powerful tool.
So, my next question is kind of like, let's say, a pilot is in their check ride test, right? And they made a visualization program and they visualize the whole thing. And then when they're actually in the flight, something they didn't plan for or they didn't visualize comes up, right? And they start to feel stressed. I think you kind of alluded to it with kind of the breathing stuff, but maybe there's some other things. What recommendations do you do to your athletes when something totally off script is happening and maybe it's the anchor statements or what kind of tips do you have
Yeah.
there?
Well, it would be, yeah. I mean, so, certainly I don't know what it's like to be in a pilot seat when that happens, but I think part of the training is desensitization, right? I mean, in order for you to be a pilot, you've got to go up in hours and hours and hours and hours of flight. And I'm sure they try to simulate some things. The Navy SEALs training, I was fortunate to talk with some SEALs when I worked for the Giants. And, they're jumping out of planes at 2 in the morning into desert foreign countries and they sleep on the plane before their drop off. I'm like, how do you sleep? They said we've done this in our mind, we've done this so that ad nauseum, so we know what to do. And so, but still there are times when, like you said, to your point, the unexpected happens. So what happens? There's a rush of cortisol, stress, adrenaline, all these things start to happen. And so the response to that physiologically is to take a breath, to calm yourself down so that you can, all right, slow down. And then you can rationally think about whether it's the anchor statement of, what would be the first thing a pilot would have to do if this happened? Okay, I've got to do this. And then your focus goes to that. And then so I think you create a checklist. So for example, if I relate that to pitching, if the first three guys hit singles and it's bases loaded, no one out in the first inning, I'm elevated. I'm like,
Yeah.
what's going on here? So so you slow down and you think about, you don't want, okay, I could give up a grand slam on the next pitch. You could, but that's the worst case scenario. So you start to think about, okay, how do I do this in chunks? I need to throw a strike. If I get a ground ball, I can get two outs. So you start to go through the things. And I think that would be a checklist of pilots too. Okay, after the emotion, the breath, the awareness, the focus on that, then you can go through a checklist. Okay, I need to do this, this, and this. So the breath and the ability to separate the emotion from not separate it, but to kind of somewhat control it, allows you to think more clearly.
Yeah, I think that could even be a possible good anchor statement for pilots is checklist, just to remind them to just go to your checklist because we have checklists for all these
Yeah,
emergency situations.
absolutely. Yeah,
Eh,
that's true. That's the first thing you go to, um you need you need that your body knows what that checklist, and you can go right down the list. Yeah.
Right. And it makes me think of so probably the most dangerous time for pilots is takeoff and landing, right? Because you're slow and you're low, and that's when things can happen to the airplane. So there's one situation that the pilots practice is you're taking off, and then you lose an engine on takeoff. So you're at this point where the airport's behind you, right? And you don't have enough altitude to make a complete turn because when you make a turn, you're going to lose a bunch of altitude. So you don't have enough altitude, but then sometimes you do. Like so, maybe if you're above 1,000 feet, you do have enough out. So you have to make that decision, and you have to make it quickly because
Yeah.
if you stay in shock for 30 seconds or whatever, you're losing altitude every second, right? And you're running out of time. So you have to. So I think that anchor statement to bring you back as quickly as possible could be really powerful
I do too.
yeah.
That would be interesting to get some of your students or other pilots feedback on that if that happens, um, because that's focusing on the task. No matter what happens, we have to. There's always a choice to make, and there's a task to follow. Bases loaded, no one out. What am I going to do? Am I going to just give in, or am I going to focus on the task? Throw a good pitch, maybe get a ground ball. If you're, I mean, the pilot that landed in the Hudson, think about, I'm sure you can appreciate how tough that was to be able to do and what he went through to be able to do that with,
Hmm.
the consequences of not only him, but others dying in this plane. That's real stuff. And for him, I haven't seen the movie, but for him to be able to control that and focus on the task was impressive.
Yeah.
Life saving,
It's a good
life saving,
it's a good
is it?
movie. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. And if we focus, like you said, if you focus on giving up that grand slam, or if we focus, we lose an engine and we focus on not making it back and crashing, like it does nothing but bad.
it doesn't lead. So bad thoughts don't lead to good results.
Yeah.
Good thoughts don't always lead to good results, but they're better than bad thoughts.
I like I like that.
Yeah.
Um, One thing I wanted to ask that I've done before, I've had like kind of like a lead visualization before, and it was really powerful. They did this thing where, so it was kind of like visualize like, something you want in your life, right? And the way they framed it is they like said you were basically like in a time machine. And so like right now, like you want all these things, and now let's go forward, 2, 3 years or whatever, and then you go forward in time and you have all these things, and they like did really descriptive things. So like think of like what does your house look like? What kind of car do you have? Like all these descriptive, like what color is it? And then they're like, and now let's go back in the time machine and come back to the present, and how does it feel now knowing that that's your future? And like I just remember feeling like so great after I did
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And it was kind of
yeah.
a cool way to do that visualization.
Well, no, I think, I mean, you had it. You maybe didn't know it, but you programmed yourself to be a pilot for whatever reason. There was something that caught your eye, and you created this, in your mind's eye, you create a vision. I wanted to be a baseball player. A lot of people do, but not, sometimes it doesn't work out. But in but a type of house. I want to live in a house like that. That drives you. Okay, how am I going to live in a house like that? Well, I've got to get this education. I got to get this job. I want to drive a car like that. What do I need to do that? So that becomes a goal and a motivation that your future or your actions and lead to. And that's like the power of the law of attraction, right? I'm not a big fan of the book The Secret. I'm just kind of neutral on it because I do believe in the laws of attraction, and I think some of it was a little crazy, but
Yeah.
um
A little
but
woo,
I do
woo
think,
woo.
yeah, if you do think good thoughts and have good visions and dreams, you can achieve it because you're already setting yourself up for that, you know and it's the people that don't have dreams and vision that never achieve what they want because they just haven't been able to commit to that. So, like Norman Vincent Peale said, if you can see it and believe it, you can achieve it.
Yeah. And I like how you put it earlier, like just having the good thoughts doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's going to make you feel better and it's going to make you motivated and your chances are going to improve a lot, I think, when you do it compared to the bad thoughts. And then like
Yeah,
also I hear that like the mind when it gets a thought, whether it's bad or good, it just sees it as like a thought. So if you think um like what's a good example? Like if I'm going to give up a home run, it just thinks like, or how
well, if
how how is it?
you're on the mound and you're thinking, "Don't give up a home run."
It just thinks home run, right?
Yeah, I just think,
Yeah,
or it doesn't equate to can't.
right. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
well, you hear golfers do it. The guy will have this putt and he'll leave it 50 feet short and he'll say, "Well, I didn't want to go long." I'm like, well, you didn't. Go deep, or I knew I was going to hit it in the water, or don't hit it in the water, don't hit it in the water. Oh, I knew I was going to hit it in the water. So it's fine, and that's when you have to correct your thoughts because Tiger Woods, good players have bad thoughts when they step away from the ball. Wait a second, I'm not going to hit this because I know if I hit it right now with what I'm thinking, what's going to happen.
Right.
So the ability to be aware of those thoughts and then step away from them is, the Headspace app is a wonderful app. Thoughts are just that, they're thoughts. It's what the significance we put to them and how much we carry them around that affect us. So
Yeah. I'm glad you realized where I was trying to go with that. So
yeah,
thank you.
yeah, I got you. I got
Cool. I want to be cognizant of your time. So let me know.
Yeah, I've got to get ready for another call, but I have a couple more minutes.
Okay, I got one more question for you, or maybe
Okay.
two. Um, if a pilot was to make a visualization program for themselves, I know we've talked a lot about it, but you kind of mentioned for like a golfer, you said like smells and how does it feel? Are there any is there any tips you would give the pilots out there who want to make a program like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can make your own on the phone or GarageBand. I have a mic. You can set up your own system to record, and actually, the personalized system, recordings are better than listening from somebody else. But um, so I think imagery is polysensory: sight, sound, smell, touch, feel. So when I write it, so pilots, I would say, what's the color of the plane? How many steps up to the plane? What's the seat feel like when you sit in it? Do you have gloves on? Do you have sunglasses on? What's the sound of the engine when it starts? Um, those little things can really pull in the imagery a lot. Um, what's the feeling of taking off? What do you do to take off? How does it feel to land? You hear the tires screech. So bringing in as much of that as you can,
The
and I think,
sensory.
yeah, the sensory. I think the tire, the landing. Yeah, you get up, but you want to come back safely. So hearing that, okay, there's the tires. Whew, I'm here. And
Yeah.
so bringing in as much of that sight, sound, smell, touch, feel, the smell of the gas, the smell of I'm sure airports have a certain smell. Maybe even the planes do. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Old trainer airplanes definitely have a smell.
Yeah. What's it feel like to have the headset on?
Mm.
You know, all those things can be brought in.
Aw-
Um,
Awesome.
yeah. Yeah. And
Very
like
cool.
I said, they can make their own. I mean, it'd be really, if you listen to a 5 minute, you can make yourself a 10-minute video and listen to it every day. It would, seeing yourself, feeling yourself take off and land, um, or doing anything, taking off and the engine goes out. What do you do? You know, you can make anything you want out of this. This is what's so great about it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so
You
much
had,
for your
did you have
time.
one more? Did you have one more question?
Yeah, it was just is there anything like how can so the book, I highly recommend it. It's called 90% Mental, but is there if people wanted to know more about you, is there a place they can read up on you or something?
No, I get off at Twitter, Instagram, I get off all that stuff.
Okay.
No, just my email. If anyone has any questions, it's btewksbury39 at Gmail. You are successful. You'll continue to be successful, and it's a thrill to be on your podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. And I honestly like when I reached out to you, you just said I love to be on, and I really, really appreciate that. So thank you so much. I think is really valuable for our students.
Good. I hope so. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great. Well,
awesome.
take care of yourself out there, Nick. Be
All right.
good.
Yep. Thanks,
See
Bob.
you later.
All
Bye.
right. Bye. Are you kidding me? I just gave you thousands of dollars for my flight training, and now you're telling me I have to buy all this other stuff? That's how I remember feeling when I was in flight training. I had two different flight schools because I moved during my flight training, and both of them said that I had to buy these study books and these plotters and all the things from their own flight school that they had, of course, marked up in price. Little did I know that I really didn't have to do this, and that I could have even went to Amazon or a older student and found a year old version of these items for much cheaper. And so when you start off flight training, it can get overwhelming because so many people out there know you're willing to spend money for your dream, and they can really take advantage of that. So that's why I created a list of our recommended products list, and it breaks it down into the categories that you only the things you need for ground school, only the things you absolutely need for flight school. And then I also have categories for things that you don't necessarily need, but might help you a lot. They make your life easier as a pilot. And then also one more category for things that you definitely don't need, but can be really fun and maybe add some fun to your flying. And we also have a section on exclusive discounts only for part-time pilot listeners. So I've been trying to work with, companies that I really like their products. I've tested their products myself over the years, and I use them myself, so they're very, very good. So I've tried to work with them to try and get some discounts for our students. So that list is growing. I think we have 3 or 4 coupon code discounts in there. So go check that out. You can go to our website, parttimepilot.com, click on students and recommended products, or check out the link in our show notes.